This is Capsule on liveinlimbo.com. My name is Sean Chin.
And I am Andreas Babilakis. This is an adventure into music, film, and pop culture.
So a lot has happened since last week, Andreas. We had the big, revelation on Sunday that Jian Ghomeshi is no longer with the CBC.
And as everyone who's listened to us knows, we actually held this man in high regard. I mean, not only is he a radio personality or somebody who does podcasts the way that we kind of shaped up a lot of our podcasts to be, and a lot of the ideas that we had were we didn't want to just interview. We wanted to actually discuss and talk and get to know people. But he's a York graduate like I am, and I knew of him before even podcasting, and he's just been a familiar face to me for a while. So yes, and then there was this news that happened, which shocked us both rather. Apparently, I don't have his skills apparently, but yes, do go on about this shocking revelation.
Well, okay, so for me, I held him in very, very high regards as a broadcaster, as you said. I think he's probably the quote unquote, as Lauren from Churches would say, the crown jewel of Canada for broadcasting and pulp culture stuff.
Yeah, he's massive.
He's up there with Strombo.
Yeah, absolutely. And their interview together when he was on Strombo, you could tell like just the absolute awe that they had for one another. Like they're equal.
Yeah, they're
both of them.
They're like the highest thing that I can think of in Canadian broadcasting, really. Can you think of anyone else?
No, I can't. And they're a face that a lot of people outside of Canada would actually recognize.
That's right. So. Because Q, the show that he co-created and that he's most known for, is even broadcasted on NPR in the States. I think on like over 100 channels or something like that. So for me to see him go down like this was a pretty big blow, but damn, I should not have said that. For him to go down like that was pretty bad for everyone, and there's no winner in this case at all.
Absolutely. For those who don't know what we're talking about, there was a big story on Sunday, which actually Jian Ghomeshi revealed himself. All anyone ever knew was that he got fired from.
Okay, so the first thing that happened was that the CBC, I think they either tweeted or something. It said, Jian Ghomeshi, we regret to say that Jian Ghomeshi is no longer at Q at the CBC anymore. And that was it for a little while. And everyone was like, what's going on? Then a few hours later, Jian... Oh, no, actually right before that, a few Globe and Mail and Toronto Star reporters were like, we've been investigating this for a while now. Stay tuned for our report. And then a few hours later, maybe like 4 hours later, then Jian Ghomeshi himself posted onto Facebook his now infamous kind of letter. But before that, I just kind of found it weird that he's been going through so many different things. Like his father passed away, and he's going through like all this rough stuff in his life, and then all of a sudden, this accusation comes against him.
Right, and I don't think that this is just a stream of coincidences. Especially with his reveal, which I'm about to get to. I think we'll talk about whose side we're on and all of that, but I think it's very interesting that you do point that out because I think that is significant. But basically, in this massive reveal, as you said, which happened a few hours later after he was terminated, his contract was terminated, and a few hours later after Global Mail and Toronto Star were saying that they're investigating, he has this massive reveal which starts off saying, times have been tough, my father's passed away, and now I've been fired from this job that I helped create. And basically it's many paragraphs. It's at least like a good 5-minute read, but the bulk of it suggests that he has a very sadomasochistic lifestyle outside of work where he and his sexual partners will engage in such activities. And apparently an ex-girlfriend of his was coming out with this information saying that she was actually beaten by him and that she was bitter that they broke up, so she was trying to spread lies to freelancers. And he basically said, "Let me tell you the story before it gets fabricated. So here you go. This is the truth." Now that's interesting because something happened afterwards, didn't it?
Yes. Well, okay. So in that moment right there, it's also interesting to see that because he is like a media mastermind, and for him to be the first one to say this is my side of the story is very, very important in this case because whoever goes first usually has the upper hand sometimes.
Yeah.
But he he hired another he hired a PR firm to help him write that letter, Navigator or something, and they helped in some other high end cases. But I'm pretty sure he himself he knew what to do in this sort of PR crisis scenario.
Well, believe it or not, actually more people have come out. So there was an initial three, but now there's more.
How many?
Last time I checked, there was like at least five.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Um, but yeah, so I guess before we go on, because there's a lot that's developed out of this, especially with a lot of the musical people that he's influenced, um, and what they've had to say. I just want to comment a little bit on what you were saying, that he's got the upper hand and whatnot. And I do agree. The problem is I don't know who to trust on this issue because obviously you have these allegations
Yeah.
on either end. But let's say that Jian Ghomeshi actually is in the right. What he says is true. He's not lying. He did the right thing. However, because you know who he is, and because you know how he works, you can see so much journalistic manipulation in what he does, even if it's for the better. The fact that he starts off discussing all of this with the mentioning that his father passed away to invoke sympathy, the fact that he again went ahead of the gang and beat everyone to the punch, which if you've watched Gone Girl, you realize it's better to be in the offense than the defense without spoiling the movie too much. But especially with that movie out, I could speculate that a lot of people will pick up on the strategy very quickly. Again, especially because this movie's just come out and it's attacking like a similar kind of issue where the media ends up being like a chess game, especially when it comes to these scandals. So you have those. You have again, he worked with PR to word everything appropriately. So he's got the right choices of words. He's got the right amount of time before everything hit the fan. He's got the proper development of what he's trying to say, where he invokes sympathy before he actually says what has happened.
That's right. He gets to paint the picture when he goes first.
Yeah, his father died. He's been fired. He started this job. You know, he's worked his bones to the grind to get here. By the way, I have kinky sex in my private life. That's nobody's business. And suddenly, it's not that big of an issue. However, with all of these allegations coming out, it's tricky because you could either see it as Jian Ghomeshi is a liar and a hypocrite, or you can see it as these three people are complete liars. So you've got issues on both ends because he seems manipulative. Why did they only come out now? There's just too many things that are just iffy on either side. So I don't know who's in the right, but do you have any preferred side at this point or no?
For me, I cannot say I'm on any one side. I can just because the full picture is not out yet. I want to see the whole story, but I will
Yeah.
say that I am very sad to see Gian, the broadcaster on the CBC, done with, and my thoughts on Gian, the person, I don't know yet. Did you
Yeah.
see Owen Pallett's
I was
post?
actually going to get into that actually.
But you read that, right?
I did read it, yes.
Essentially, he's saying that he's had a history with Gian. He considers Gian a friend, but he beat women. So at the end of the day, it's that happened. Can they still be friends? We don't know yet.
He's the only interviewee that's actually gone against the grain because you have people like Late saying there's no way that Jian Ghomeshi would be an abuser of women. He's a big advocate for women's rights and bringing women to the front of the music scene. Uh, you have a lot of people just on his side, and then you have Owen Pallett who basically said Jian Ghomeshi is my friend and he beats women. So he goes on again about their history together, and he basically concludes, I don't know if we'll ever be friends again. All I know is that he was my friend and that he beats women. And he's the first person to publicly, again, go against the grain. And this is somebody that claims to have been like a really close friend to Jian Ghomeshi, and I don't see why not, because again, because of their history. But it's just interesting because usually with these kinds of cases, with scandals, you don't see close friends going so against the person.
Well, I don't think he was against. He was just.
I think he was, absolutely. He basically said he's my friend and he beats women, so that's the end of it.
Well, it's like. Well, it was like he's my friend and this is a fact. It's not like he's my friend and I don't like him. It's like different.
Well, if you remember at the end how it says, I think our friendship is permanently damaged, and I don't know if we could ever be friends again, basically. I don't know exactly how he worded
Oh,
it,
I
but
read it as right now we're friends, and if we're going to be friends, I don't know yet.
okay, that kind of makes sense. But even so, their friendship's questioned
Yeah.
because he's basically saying, like, well, I'm not gonna say that you've done what Jian Gomeshi's done because it's terrible, but let's say that you did something like you stole a chocolate bar, and I would say yes, Sean Chin is a friend of mine, but this has dampened our relationship so much that I don't know if we could ever be friends again.
Okay, bye. No,
Or see you later.
no, okay, but I think
Have a good one.
at the end of the day, though, no one wins because the women lose. Like women in general lose because of this whole culture of abuse against them. As the listeners, lose because we lost Gian and his show, and Gian loses because he lost his show that he made and his livelihood. And I think the CBC also loses too because they acted too quickly and it looks really suspicious.
I think that there's more at stake, especially with the first loss that you mentioned, because this is a big setback for women, obviously, and it's more than just like losing a host or whatnot. I mean, this is even worse than Chris Brown, let's say. Chris Brown has been joked about for
Well,
ages.
I don't know if it's
Yeah, think
worse than
about it.
that.
First of all, he's seen as a hooligan already, right? He's already seen as like this guy who's got a short temper. He was already seen as like this tough guy, and he abused Rihanna, which is bad enough, right? But then you see Jian Ghomeshi, who's seen as like this respectable figure who's classy. He's the face of an organization, and not only did he like abuse women, but he threatened them, he belittled them, he basically put them in their place and said, "Nobody will ever take your side. You are worthless. You are nothing." I think it's way worse, and it happened to multiple people.
Yeah, that's a good point too. But
I think it's way worse, absolutely. So this is more than just a domestic dispute. This is a face that we've been listening to for all of these years, basically
also from what I've
demeaning
heard
women.
before, and I can see it myself, he's been labeled as an egomaniac. Like he's up there, like an arrogant kind of person.
Well, it's more than just that. Apparently, not only is he an egomaniac, but he's an egomaniac to the point of near delusion almost, where if he tries to pick up women, apparently he has like really awkward pickup lines that just do not work at all. I don't know.
But he thinks it works because he's Gian.
That the problem is because of all of this recent controversy, I don't know how much of this is just exaggeration or how much of it is actually true, because who really knows?
Yeah, except the people that he tries it on.
People forget that what he does is, again, it's a form of publication, except it's verbal, where anything that he says goes. So people forget that we might be taking all of these comments and all of these recent revelations a bit too seriously, because they might be just be honing his own craft. But then again, he might just be so good at his craft that we've believed him this whole time.
That's true as well. So we got to see where this goes. I guess they have the CBC's like really investigating this, and I don't think they would fire him like immediately if they didn't know something, like they had like hard facts about it too.
Well, they were saying that this was like developing for a while, where there was this pressing issue that they couldn't get rid of, and once it got really hot, that's when they had to drop him. So it's not something that just happened, right?
Yeah. And so on the flip side, if he is right and the women lied, his career is still marred. Like even though he's clear, I don't think other people would want to rehire him.
Yeah, because he's still associated with a tainted image, and it's not like a comeback career you can have as a musician or as an
Well, maybe I
actor.
would say there's probably maybe like a 20% chance that could happen.
I don't know, because a lot of people will be disinterested. They'll say, "Why should I listen to this guy? I still believe that he did this, or I still
Yeah.
believe that something's wrong." Absolutely.
I still think there's a lot of followers for him though. But what I thought was interesting as well is that the CBC decided to continue Q and but with a guest host.
Yeah.
Eh,
Well, I
I
think
don't think it
it's a
will.
temporary replacement, right?
Yeah, it's the same team that produces and edits and brings it together. Those people are fine. I appreciate those people, but I don't think it's still not Q without Jian.
Well, the thing is, yeah, well, Q's still gonna go on, but either way, I don't. I think his career is basically done, because if anything like Gone Girl is a representative of, it's the fact that even if you are in a good position with a scandal like this, where they do dig deeper and they do uncover stuff, there will be stuff, even if he's in the right, that will go against him. Where it's like, well, we've discovered all of this stuff, and suddenly that private life he said is my own. It's still open to the public, and regardless of how much of it is private or not, it's still going to taint his image, right?
Yep.
Oh well, we'll keep in touch with all of this as it goes on, obviously, because again, Jian Ghomeshi is somebody that we used to look up to, and it's really difficult to separate what he's done or possibly done with his art. But we'll see. We'll see how this develops. Maybe he is good. Maybe he's worse than we thought in a situation. Well, we'll find out. But on the topic of women and strength, we have.
Wait! Don't jump into that so quickly.
Oh no,
I just wanted to say, like, so if when they decide to continue Q without him, I think that was weird because for myself, I had a radio show back in on campus at UOIT and Durham College called Detuned Radio. And when I thought about making this podcast some years later, I was thinking about using the same name, but it's not the same without your co-host and that same setting. So I
right.
don't know. I had to rename it, and I think they should do the same with Q.
Well, then again, Q is vastly established. So if they did
But
that,
he co-create. I wonder co-created it. I wonder if he can have any like claim to that name.
but it's a radio show though. It's not like the Tonight Show or anything where you see it on TV. It's a radio show, so if you change the name, people will not know what it is.
Yeah, but
That's
that's
the
not
problem.
his problem. He
That
made it. He should retain it if he has any kind of claim on the trademark.
that's exactly it though. It's not his problem. That's why they're not making a fuss about it.
Well, I mean, it is his problem, but it's not his problem that they'll lose a popular name.
I just see it as they see him as not a part of it at all anymore.
Yeah,
So
but
I
if he
don't think
made
that.
it, I don't know what their agreement was when they initially made it. But I'm disappointed that we can't use to be continued now. That's all I wanted.
Well, maybe after in due time. We could just use that instead in due time.
I don't know. That sounds too formal. In
To be
due
continued,
time.
isn't?
All
In due
right.
time.
I understand that you have some other interesting news.
Uh, well, interesting is right, of course. Let's look at successes. Let's look at actual successes. We have
There are none so far this year in music,
well,
album wise.
well, there is possibly one with Taylor Swift's 1989. The
Yeah.
problem is, well, that's better news for you than it is for me. But the
You don't like
problem,
Taylor Swift?
not a big
Oh my
fan.
god, she's
But
awesome.
the problem is, this was potentially the first year to not have a platinum album since the inception of platinum albums. And that was seen as a big threat until 1989 went way off the charts, I guess, this week. And it's seen as like the only album that might be able to, except for Disney's Frozen soundtrack. And it's interesting because a song by Taylor Swift also was the number one song for this week, or was last week rather. And this song, which was number one, was 8 Seconds of Static.
So yeah, the news from the Atlantic says track 3 from Taylor Swift's new album 1989, which is a year older than when I was born, 1988, rose to number one on
Younger.
younger. Oops, sorry, my bad. On iTunes Canada, and this is interesting because, yeah, as you said, it was simply 8 songs of white noise.
Right, and
An error,
that's
obviously.
yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because obviously she has a fan base that wanted to buy her track, and that's why it skyrocketed it to number one. But
I did not
nobody
buy it.
actually nobody actually listened to it though, and I think that's a very big indicator. Even though we've already known this for many years, everybody's fully aware of it. It's still a pressing indicator as to what pop culture and the pop industry is. It's not that we bought the song because we thought it was good, or we thought it was some jam session in the middle of a Sonic Youth, you know, interlude where it has like a lot of noise or anything. I love Sonic Youth, by the way. That's not a dig at them. They're one of the best bands of all time. But um, instead, nobody actually listened to this song. They said, "Oh, it's Taylor Swift. I must have this right now," without even hearing it. It could have easily been Taylor Swift using the ladies' room or something. I don't know, something extremely disgusting,
That would have
and they would
sold
have bought
like
it anyways.
hotcakes.
Yeah, and then
You
once
know,
they
she
realized what it
should
was, they
she
would have
should
bought even
actually
more.
she should actually release like 8 seconds of static. Like that should be the actual track just for fun.
Well, knowing her, because hasn't she kind of poked fun at herself before?
Yeah, she
She
has.
has, so she might.
She's
Who
a good girl. I
knows?
like her.
Oh well, rather you than me. She's all right, but um,
That song's catchy. That shake it off one. Shake it.
I prefer the 8 seconds of static. Actually,
Oh, okay then.
I don't actually. I'm just kidding. She's not bad. I'm just not a big fan. It's not my taste. Let's say.
So do you think all of this? So out of all, like, what other what? So I know that you liked a lot of albums this year, but were you like dissatisfied that no other big albums were close
Well,
to
I
making
figured that
platinum?
I figured that they wouldn't be, because if you look at a lot of the big albums of this year, you have stuff like Swans, who obviously won't sell a million records, not because they're not good, but because they're not
No,
going to be
not them,
accessible
but
to everyone.
like mainstream people.
Yeah,
Are
well,
are you like surprised that like someone else didn't make it?
not really, because as I was getting to with my point before, a lot of people who are listening to music heavily are into bands like Swans, for instance, or Caribou, or anything of that ilk, where it's not on the radio, it's not as accessible to people who aren't, like avidly searching for music outside of the radio. So because a lot of music fans are diverting into that direction, you're having so many people who are listening to the radio and not wanting to buy anything from it because that's kind of their solace. So the most money that the music industry is getting is from people like us who are listening to, again, bands like Swans, who aren't for everybody, whereas those listening to popular music are okay with it being on the radio. And you don't have like really massive releases this year, like Lady Gaga was last year, Beyonce was last year, Katy Perry's last year, for instance. Taylor Swift is this year, which is the difference. Daft Punk was last year, right?
Yeah, but
Who's
there was
really massive that came out this year, except
yeah,
for Taylor
that's
Swift?
the thing, right?
Yeah, so I don't think it's a big indicator at all, because the music industry is changing.
It's changing rapidly.
Yeah, the biggest purchasers are people like us who don't buy stuff like, like Ludacris or Flowrider or anything.
And also we don't buy things like how we used to. I guess so when they say the platinum goes album, does that include buying the album on iTunes? Or does it have to be only like physical stuff?
No, it's any format.
Okay, well, so then that translates into the next piece of news because iTunes sales are down 13% this year. And that's why they're planning on rebuilding their whole streaming business with the Beats Music service. So
I blame you two.
that $3 billion acquisition from Beats is making more sense now because the digital downloads is decreasing. You're blaming who?
I'm blaming you two.
Me?
No, you two.
Oh, YouTube.
No, the band you two. You know the
Oh,
one
yeah.
that gave their album for free and made us never trust iTunes ever again?
How come that's not platinum?
Well, first,
Isn't that
well,
like
it's not
500 times
sales though.
platinum?
It's not sales though. Nobody bought it.
Well, it counts like in your receipt thing. It says purchase history.
I don't know.
It's cheating, but technically it should be
I think
500 times platinum.
yeah, I don't think it applies. And
That's
I'm glad that it
bullshit.
doesn't because if that was like the only album that made it, yeah, Songs of Innocence, which is easily the worst U2 album in existence. Yeah, that would be pretty bad. But yeah, again, like the industry is just shifting, and that's why something like the iTunes streaming would actually be good because you have the radio listeners who will be finding all of this stuff that I've been talking about, like Caribou, which isn't too hard to get into. They'll be discovering stuff like Caribou because of streaming devices. And the thing is, you have Spotify already, you have Pandora, you have all these venues that you can already check out music with. But iTunes, because so many people have it already, and I'm guessing that technology makes a lot of people lazy, they don't really have to look for it. It's basically just there in their hands already. So why not give it a shot, you know?
So then the next question is, say in 5 or 7 years, when, let's say, at least 50% or more of the population is streaming, how can you sell, how do you even like sell an album in platinum style if you're streaming?
Well, I think those days are over.
So they should like make a new scale or criteria thingy, like
well,
platinum stream.
well, in Canada, it's less. Platinum, it's not a million albums. It's less. Diamond is a million albums in Canada. Like we've already got like a lower system that the states can actually follow suit with.
Yeah, you just have to lower the numbers. Just remove a zero and everything's good.
The problem is though, that's not how the industry sees it. The industry sees it as we can't change our scale, we have to reach it again. That's how they do it. And then they're going to come up with some greed ridden way to try and get back up there instead of saying, hey, the industry's changed. We should adjust, actually adjust, and not just adjust to scale. But, they're not going to think that way. They're going to think, how could we pump out more sales in this department or that department? They're not going to actually think of a way outside of just deriving more money out of something and just trying to continue this anti-piracy battle, which isn't working clearly. And I think it's a big waste of money instead of actually like trying to think of like a genius way to actually think of a different venue.
So for you yourself, you've tried every method now, and I let you try Spotify. So right now, as of this moment, what type of medium are you preferring?
Like you're including like home releases and everything as well, right?
Yeah, like do you still prefer digital downloads or streaming or CDs or vinyls?
Oh, well, I've got a or I've got a record collection now, and that is my preferred method. But it's still pretty small. I've got like maybe 50 entries, and
Like when you
more.
step back and you think about it, which one are you using the most daily for like the last month? Which one are you actually listening to?
For me personally, that's a hard question because I have my iPod, which I have a lot of digital files on. I listen to my record player with my surround sound system. I have
How
the
long
CDs in my car.
per day?
Well, like 1 or 2 albums a day, so that's like an hour or two, right?
And then in the car, how long?
Well,
How
it
long are
depends
you
on how
driving
far I'm
for?
driving. Like,
Yeah.
let's say today I drove for an hour total, so I listened to PJ Harvey's album twice.
So you're on par with the CD in the car and your vinyl. And how long do you listen to your iPod?
Well, at home, it depends on how I feel because in my spare time, I'll watch a lot of movies or I'll be on YouTube. So it depends on how I feel. Like today, I was listening to the new Run the Jewels album, which is free, luckily, and I had it on for a little bit. So that the digital files were on for a little while. But let's say on another day, I don't feel like listening to my iPod, right?
Well,
Whereas
so to me,
in a
it kind of
car, I'll
sounds
always
like
have the CD.
so to me, it kind of sounds like you're doing all three pretty evenly.
Yeah, I'm jumping around. That's why for me it's difficult. But if I had a preferred method, it would be vinyl because it sounds crisp and clear. But I won't get some things on vinyl because I don't think
Yeah.
I need it on vinyl. But if something like, let's go back to Sonic Youth, Daydream Nation, where you can hear all these qualities and all of these tones that you won't hear on digital files, I think it's one of the best music purchases I've ever made, by far.
Yeah. And so speaking of ways to try to boost sales, today's the Mercury Prize in the UK, and the winner should be, I don't even know what time they're doing the reveal. They're like,
It is today, right?
yeah. But I
Well,
guess they're like 8 hours ahead.
yeah, by the time this is posted, this is old news. But
Okay. Have you seen the nominees?
I have seen the nominees, and I have only heard a few albums by a few of them.
Well, that's
What?
okay, but like, so the main thing I wanted to say about the Mercury Prize, we'll get into who we think will win a bit later in the show, but
Okay.
so to raise albums, usually when an artist gets nominated, you will see a boost in sales.
Yeah.
So, Music Week has a report. They're saying Royal Blood sees a 62% sales rise after being nominated for the Mercury Prize, and also Jungle got a boost as well, and also is it FKA Twigs? How do you
Yep.
pronounce it? FKA Twigs, yes, or FK Twigs,
No, it's
whatever.
FKA.
Yeah,
It means formerly known as.
Twigs. Yeah, that's good. I did it right. Good job. Anyway, so those three got a boost. However, 1/4 of the finalists who were nominated only sold fewer than 1,000 albums since being nominated. So we can see that's weird because either that nomination didn't is not worth as much, which I think it is worth that much, or they just nominated bands that were obscure enough that no matter how much nominations they got, they still wouldn't be picked up by the mainstream.
I think it's a slower year as well. I mean, like if you look at last year, you have James Blake who won, Arctic Monkeys, David Bowie, Disclosure, Foles, John Hopkins, Savages. All of these are really big names.
Oh yeah,
Laura
you can't
Marling.
compare last year with this year. Like,
Yeah, this year you have not as many notable names. You have Damon Albarn, who released his first solo album, FKA Twigs, who is also gaining popularity, Royal Blood, Bombay Bicycle Club, and one or two others that I actually know of, which it could
Polar
be
Bear.
just my ignorance. Yeah, it could just be my ignorance, or it could be the obscurity, because when we talked about the Polaris Prize back when we did that podcast, we actually discussed the similarities between that and the Mercury Prize. And as you could see, the Polaris Prize winner was a northern throat singer, and you had experimental music on there as well. So
I hope, I hope someone releases like a stat on like the Polaris nominees and the winner. I wonder if they got a boost. I'm thinking Tigak did for sure,
well, that's because she won,
and
but
people want to check out her music.
yeah, but again, that's because she won. Right now, this is like there's no winner announced yet, or maybe like tonight there will be, or even it might have just happened. I don't know because it's hours ahead over there. But yeah, so maybe after the actual event has happened, let's see about that. But beforehand, I don't think a lot of people, except if they're you or myself, will actually be listening to stuff beforehand. They'll be saying who won. Okay, that's the best. I'm listening to that. That's the kind of attention span people have. Instead of saying all of these are worthy, let me check them all out. They want to say who won. Who is this James Blake and his Overgrown album? I want to listen to this over somebody else that he beat, right?
Yep. And so I don't know if you can see the graph or not. There's a cool graph on the Guardian website, but
Okay.
under 5, like Go Go Penguin, and let's see, Polar Bear, and Young Fathers.
Yep.
Even before being nominated and after being nominated, each of those three only sold under 5,000 albums.
Right. So they weren't big to begin with. So you could tell that a lot of these were obscure anyways.
But that's kind of huge, like, and they're being nominated for the Polaris Prize. And then they're up against Royal Blood, who has like 150,000 sales.
Right. Or FKA Twigs, who's, like
Actually, surprisingly, FKA Twigs only sold 12,750 in the UK.
Well, that's in the UK. She's pretty big over here, actually.
Yeah.
But just wait. Like, her popularity is rising, not to mention the fact that she is dating Robert Pattinson. So that alone is sadly increasing her popularity, not because she doesn't deserve it. She's great, but because it drew a lot of negative attention to her, especially like racial discrimination, where, a lot of people wanted the Twilight couple to stay together, which is really sad because, somebody like FKA Twigs, who deserves some sort of recognition for her actual talent, is getting this stupid immature backlash. But either way, her position in the mainstream is only rising, and I don't think she has too much to worry about because I think she's going to be making a lot of sales in the future.
Yep.
and hopefully all of this immaturity will end.
Like Royal Blood is like a big buzz band right now. They played a small show in Toronto. Sarah and Randall cover their show, and both of them really like them. So,
Yeah,
who do you think is gonna win the Mercury Prize?
it's gonna win.
Okay, let's
That's
set
a
off with
tough
who you
call.
really liked. One that you really liked, and then who you think is gonna win.
Really, like out of this list or in
Yeah, out of the
general?
list for the
Okay, out of
nominees.
the list, because to be frank, if I look at past lists, like obviously I'm a big PJ Harvey fan, so stuff like Let England Shake, I would say it was a clear runner. Or if you look at something like I Am a Bird Now by Anthony and the Johnsons, which also won, I'd say okay, that's a clear runner. As for this, I don't have any that are like absolute huge favorites of mine, but if I had to compare out of the ones that I do know, because again, I haven't heard like half of this list, out of the ones that I do know, the most qualified I would say is FKA
I
Twigs.
was gonna say the same thing. I hope she wins.
Hopefully,
That was my
but who
favorite
knows?
out of this. Actually, Royal Blood and Jungle and Bombay are all good, but I think and I want FKA Twigs to win. When I heard
Yeah.
her album LP1, it just sounded so fresh.
Again, I do like it, but I don't know if I love it as much as other people, and that's why I was saying that I don't have any like clear absolute diehard faves here because I do like LP1. I do. I think it's got a lot of creativity behind it. It's very
I
lush.
regret not seeing her perform. I think the whole Live in Limbo team just kind of like missed her. Actually,
See, that would have been cool
she was on the
because
on our monthly assignment list too, and no one took it up.
I didn't even notice. Then again, I didn't even notice Deerhoof this upcoming month rather. So that was like a late registration. I was like, oh please give me Deerhoof. But I kind of wish I did see her live because that's the thing. LP1, yeah, I think it's pretty good. I don't think it's amazing, but I think
And you
live
want
she'd be great.
to see them live when they have like a debut in your city before they get big. So that's why Sarah and Randall were happy when they saw Royal Blood
Yeah, because you want to be able to see the spark. See, aha, I saw when this person exploded.
in Lee's
Right?
Palace, for example. And next year they're going to be at like the ACC.
Yeah, like what happened with Elephant and Us? Remember when we said, "Aha, this is a person, right?
Yeah.
This is a performer," and then suddenly now she's
Yeah, actually that's
making all
funny
these
because
lists.
we noticed her, right, last year
Yeah,
and we try to focus in on that. Now she's like Billboard hype girl person.
exactly. And it's like we called it, we called it. So it would have been nice if we saw somebody like FKA Twigs and said the same thing, but it's all right. We'll see her when it's her second album. She's got all of this money, all of this success, and it'll be like this insane, crazy show. So that's all right.
Yeah, we'll get her next time. All right. You have any other news? Anything else you want to talk about?
Not really, except for the fact that a bunch of us at Live in Limbo caught the Slow Dive
Oh
show,
yeah.
which
Okay,
was
let's talk about that. How was
sure,
that? So they're one of your favorite bands ever,
one of my favorite '90s bands for sure.
and we had the rare and utmost privilege of interviewing Rachel Goswell of Slow
Yes,
Dive on this podcast.
yes,
So
and
tell me everything from the beginning of the night, during, and at the end. Let's go.
well,
What did you
uh,
eat for dinner?
I don't think I ate anything. What happened was I was at Varsity Theater. I had popcorn, I guess, because I was watching Whiplash, and I walked for
With
like 40
butter or
minutes.
without butter?
It was with butter.
Large popcorn?
No, it was just medium.
Like when I say butter, like actual butter or basil?
I don't know what they use. This is oddly specific for a slow dive
Oh, okay.
critique.
Okay, so keep going. It's part of the adventure.
I guess because it is a pretty magic moment, and sometimes some shows create that day, which is a staple in your mind. I do remember the time I went to go see My Bloody Valentine when I saw Beach House this year. Those days were staples in my mind, and
Yeah.
this is another
This one
entry.
this one when you look back now, you'll realize that you saw Slow Dive on an empty stomach. Well, not an empty stomach, but with popcorn in your stomach.
Basically, yeah. So this will be a staple, obviously, and we went. Well, not we. I myself, the royal we. I said we because there's a lot of us who were there actually, but I went walking um, pretty far. I met up with a friend who was at the front of the line. Sorry to say that I kind of cut, but I did, and I got my media ticket and I went in. Now I've been in a Danforth a few times now. been to cover Ty Segall. I've been there to cover Flying Lotus and other acts, and I've never had to sit on the balcony before. I guess because this show was sold out, they actually said, "Okay, you've got to go upstairs and sit on the balcony." And I kind of questioned it. I said, "Really?" And they said, "Yeah, yeah, you've got to go upstairs." So, like the humble, uh, innocent newscaster you have here, I went to the bathroom, and when nobody was looking, I snuck out of the bathroom and went into the very front of the hall.
You bad boy.
So I was there at the very front waiting for Slowdive, and I met up with some friends, and a lot of Live Limbo people came up as well. Like Mike Gallagher came to say hi to me. I saw Sarah Ricks from afar. Who else from Live Limbo went? Well, Maya took pictures, of course. But anybody else?
Everyone was there.
Everyone was there. And I saw some friends of old. I met some new people. It was great. And Low started. They were very like subdued, kind of like quiet, emotional kind of act. So they started the night off. It was pretty nice and relaxing, but it was also really emotional. Like Mimi Parker, who's the drummer and one of the singers, actually looked like she was going to cry the entire time. And I don't know if that was because of the music or because something was actually on her mind, but it was tough. It was uncomfortable in a good way because it was like, what is she fighting? What is going on? Because it looked like she was going to just like break out into tears virtually the entire time, and I don't know why. And then we waited for a little bit. Slowdive came on like 10 minutes after they were supposed to, so a lot of us were like, we're Slowdive, we're waiting for them. We've waited like 20 years for this. And then they came out with this really crazy light show, which had
that looked really cool, like television sets in the background.
Yeah, it was like these slanted screens, which had like a lot of like 90s imagery, like all these colors.
It was
like
almost Radiohead-esque, kind of.
Actually, that's what one of my friends said. He said, "Hey, yo, they're taking something from like the book of Radiohead," and I said, "I don't know what you're talking about." And he showed me the King of Limbs tour pictures, and I said, "Okay, yeah, that's pretty close." But then they also had like the brightest strobe lights I've ever seen, actually.
And so, did they satisfy your craving to hear them live?
Yes, because all of the emotions you get from the music were like tenfold live.
Amplified,
because yeah, well, not just because of like the volume itself, but because as I said in the review, you feel like a lot of like maturity and like a looking back and like a kind of like a hope of remembering. So it's instead of it being like a stream of conscious kind of melody or set of lyricism, it ends up being like us looking back and saying those were the days, why don't we have those now? And it was really touching and just highly emotional. Just a very good trip. And then like the more tense parts had like the crazy strobes, and like the TV screens were going insane as well. And just everything about it was a trip. It was always emotional. It was either just like you were blown away or you just got really emotional because of how sad the subject matter was. And it was just fantastic.
I think it's interesting because remember when we talked to Rachel, she said when they initially came back for their reunion tour, they had no kind of set design because they didn't think it was them. And then the manager told them to put up that it was just like a big banner sign behind them for Primavera. It just says Slowdive, and they're like, oh, we thought that's weird, but I guess it looks cool. And now to this, where they have all these cool lightings and TV setups in the background.
Well, if you think about it, they did take a break from music. I mean, well, you did have the Mojave 3, but still, like Slowdive itself as an entity was gone for 20 years. So when it all came back, they obviously had a lot of questions, like how do we present this properly? And I guess they didn't want like such a big bang, but now that they've got everything kind of worked out, because I mean, this was like very cleverly put together. Like it felt like a 90s music video, like you were watching Slowdive or Ride or something on MTV back when they used to play stuff like this occasionally. And like just everything felt like you could see the scan lines on the TV. The just everything was like faintly colored, like the pixels on your set, of course. And it was a big throwback.
Did they interact a lot with the crowd?
A little bit.
Did you say anything? Did they talk to the crowd?
Well, mostly because you had some really loud people who were just kind of yelling. just obnoxiously, but they thought it was hilarious. Some guy told Neil to cut his hair, and he said, "Well, I think you're a little bit sick," or something like that.
Oh.
A lot of people were like, "Rachel Goswell, marry me," and she would just laugh it off, or whatever, or she'd try and bring attention to the other band members. She was like, "Oh, you can't forget about these guys."
That's good.
Yeah, no, they interacted a little bit, and even without that, they said, "Hey, we haven't played at Toronto for a while."
Yeah, how long did they say? Like 25 years or something?
They said 20 years.
Yeah, 20 years. Wow.
Yeah, it's been 20 years.
All right, so it sounds like you had a great time.
Yeah, and that is, of course, it's going to be a staple of one of the best shows that I've been to. So.
Wow. All right, let's wrap up the show. Where can all of our listeners find you, Andreas?
They could find me at Andreas Babs on Twitter.
You can find myself on Twitter at Sean Chin. You can find the show at Live in Limbo and use the hashtag Capsule Podcast to join in on the conversation. Please subscribe to the show on iTunes. And as always, you can find the show notes and all the links at liveinlimbo.com/capsule. See you next time.
Have a good one.